There was talk, of course. There is always talk. At the reception, I changed again, not to compete, but because I had brought the clothes. And boldness is a muscle that grows with use. Amanda's mother watched me with the sharp eyes of women who have read the book before. Be careful, she told her daughter. Clingy mothers drain joy. Amanda squeezed her hand and laughed. You don't know her yet, she said. Watch. God bless that child. She knew when to pour oil on water. When they planned the honeymoon, I shocked myself by asking to come. Even now I cannot tell you what possessed me. Perhaps it was the same jar, refusing to stay shut. Dozy nearly set the house ablaze with his anger. Amanda cooled him, as if he were soup taken too far on the fire. Let her come, she said. We will give her a room. She will not crowd us. And so I went, the first time in my life that travel was not for buying or selling or mourning. At the beach one evening, the wind came hard and kind, lifting the hem of my wrapper. Young couples laughed the way people laugh when they forget anyone older exists. Amanda tugged my sleeve and led me to a small wooden kiosk, painted with bright, foolish colors. Good luck box, the sign said. Write your wish, lock it in, hold on. We wrote in secret, our heads bent together like conspirators. I folded my paper, small as a seed, and dropped it into the tin, with a sound only I heard. I did not tell her I had written her name beside the word child, a prayer I had kept for the daughter I did not bring into the world. Back home, life resumed its ordinary sprint. My business hummed. The market called me Madam, like my shadow had become larger than me. One afternoon at the motor park, the world surprised me with an old song. Ego! The voice was a bridge thrown across years I had drowned. I turned, and the face I had built from scraps matched the man before me. Odile, older, hands calloused, eyes careful. 1,000 things rose and collapsed in my mouth. We sat side by side on cracked seats, knees nearly touching, pretending to be strangers who had a lot to say. He told me his wife had died young, that he had tried to carve a life out of wood and stubbornness, that he had once come back to Umi looking for me, but the village had already swallowed my footsteps. I told him nothing about Dozy. Some truths need fences. He followed me to Umachi as if following his shadow. He came again and again, and I let him. The old flame that had been sleeping all this while opened one eye and then the other, and I scolded it the way you scold a goat that has found the vegetable bed again. One evening he spoke plainly, his voice low, the smell of palm wine threading the night. Ego, I have walked the long way around the same tree. I want to stop walking. Marry me. The word marry fell between us like a basket. I could fill it or kick it aside. I did neither. I paced the room after he left, counting the lines on the floor as if they could spell a future. My hand dialed my son before my mind could warn it. If I were to marry, I asked him, my voice doing its own trembling, would you stand with me? He said yes, like rain falling on dry land. I asked, if your father appeared tomorrow, would you spit? Would you turn your face? Silence first, and then a miracle. It would be a gift, he said. I cannot hate a ghost. I hung up and pressed the phone to my chest until it warmed my skin. The next time Odile came, I opened the gate between us. Do you want children? I asked, rude and direct, like a market woman giving the first price. His answer was a soft hunger. I took a breath that felt like stepping into a river. You have one already, I said. He is tall, stubborn, and good. He is yours. His face folded. Surprise? Grief? Joy? Something like shame. We traveled to the city that night, my palms sweating in my lap, my heart running ahead of me through traffic. Dozy opened his door wide, the room smelling of fried eggs and cologne. We stood there, 3 points of a triangle, everything overdue but not too late. Odile reached first. My son did not flinch. Their hug had its own language, body speaking to body across the gap of years. I turned away and wept into Amanda's shoulder, the lace of her blouse scratching my cheek, like the world telling me it was real. When I turned back, Odili was on one knee, a ring in his palm, his eyes bright with the foolish bravery men get when their hearts have decided, and their mouths must now follow. I felt my age, and then I felt it fall away like an old wrapper untied. "Say yes," Amanda whispered, her breath warm at my ear. I did. She ran upstairs and came down with the little tin box we had left to dream. "Open," she said. Inside was a scrap of paper, the ink smudged from being held too long. She had written my name and love, and wedding, and child. Then she smiled with a light I cannot describe. "I am pregnant," she said. The room swayed and steadied. My mouth kept saying God, and my eyes kept washing my face. I told her my own word in the box had been child, with her name on it, and we laughed like sisters. Because what else do women do when the world finally says yes to a decent thing? We planned my wedding the way careful people build a house, with joy and with measurements. The men argued about small matters and pretended they were large. The women solved large matters and pretended they were small. On the morning of the day, the sky itself pressed its hand on my head and blessed me. I wore the dress that fit, like it had learned my shape in a previous life. I tied a second wrapper for the reception that made me walk like drums. We danced until even the old ones forgot to sit. People who had gossiped about the white dress at my son's wedding came and wiped their eyes in the corner so no one would see. Odili held my hands, and we said what people say in front of God and neighbors. I meant every word with both hands. After, he took me away for a month, a whole month, not to buy stock, not to visit sick aunties, not to hustle papers, but to climb into rest as if it were a hammock tied between two palm trees. We learned how to be silly in the afternoons, how to sleep with the window open to the sea, how to count blessings without losing track. Sometimes, very early, before the sun understood what it was meant to do, I would wake and sit by the window and watch my past come and go, like fishing boats on a tide that finally knew which way home was. I would touch the ring and think of my son's little hand, long ago, clammy in mine as we crossed the road, of the woman I had become, of the girl who had carried me forward, even when she had no right to be so brave. I am ego. I have made mistakes, and I have made stew with very little meat. I have worn white twice, once like a dream sneaked in through the side door, once like a promise kept. I have loved a boy until he became a man, and I have loved a man as if time were reasonable. I have stood in church with people's eyes on my back and not broken. I have sat in market dust and counted out change to the last coin and still looked up to find God watching me with soft eyes. My life is not perfect. It is mine. When I look at Amanda's belly rising like a new moon, when I watch Dosie's laughter fill a room, when I catch Odili staring at me like I'm a miracle that refuses to finish, I think of the old jar on the shelf. I hear it rattling. I climb the stool, take it down, open it, and finally, I let sweetness unspool without fear. I am called Ego, daughter of Umi's red earth and rainy seasons, woman of market dust and morning hymns, a dark-skinned woman whose palms still smell of shea butter and clean money counted at dusk. I am the girl they sent away at 16, with shame piled higher than the cassava sacks at the square. I am the mother who learned to breathe in a new town with a baby at her breast and no one to call family. When I say my life has been long, I don't mean by years. I mean by the way certain nights refuse to end, by the way a memory can drag its feet like a stubborn goat and refuse to move. There was a boy once, Odili, whose laughter tasted like roasted maize and rain on hot zinc. He left before my belly began to rise, like a calabash set upon the river. They asked me for his name, for his father's compound, for the story that would wash their shame clean, and I had nothing but a silence that grew teeth. My parents turned their faces from me, like morning flowers folding at noon. "Go," my mother said, voice trembling like a drum played off rhythm. "We cannot carry this." And so I left, carrying it anyway. Umachi took me in the way a city takes in a stray, with noise, with hurry, with a faint curiosity that passes. I slept in a widow's back room, my head against the wall, belly speaking in small kicks, my ears full of other people's quarrels and laughter. I learned the smell of river fish before dawn, learned the price of tomatoes by touch, learned to hold my head up, even when women looked through me, the way people look through dust. When my son came, Dozy, my small miracle, heavy and angry at everything, I learned a new map of breath. His first cry cut me open and stitched me back with the same thread. I said to God, between sweat and salt, "If you keep him, I'll keep going." God kept him. I kept going. The market taught me how to multiply myself. Morning. I was the girl who smiled with a full mouth of teeth and greeted everyone's mother by name. Afternoon. I was the woman behind the counter who could take 4 orders at once and remember who owed me for last week's gari. Night. I was the kind of quiet that has a backbone. I learned to bargain like a prayer and pray like a bargain. Madam Ego. The women began to call me, their eyes softening as my racks multiplied. Rice in sacks like fat sleeping children. Groundnut oil lit up in the sun like gold. Bales of second-hand clothes that smelled of distant rain. I hired girls with quick hands and boys with long legs for errands. I kept records. Red pen for debtors. Blue for those who paid on time. The day a woman called me wealthy, I laughed so hard I nearly dropped a tray of eggs. Wealthy, I still cooked on a single burner stove and slept with one ear awake. But I understood what she meant. I had made a island where there had been none. Every man who came near me walked backwards the moment he knew how much I could carry. They liked my laugh. They liked my waist when I tied a wrapper high and firm. They liked that I listened like water listens. But they did not like that my life had railings, that my son's name sat on my tongue like the first word of every sentence. I did not blame them. Most men are taught to be kings in rooms they did not build. And I was too busy laying block upon block to hold their crowns steady. I poured everything into my boy. Dozy grew like a weed that knew which way was up, all long limbs and bright eyes, his skin the color of ripe cola, and his laughter easy. In the mornings, his small hand would slip into mine as we walked, his steps trying to match my own like a stubborn echo. In the evenings, he would sit on the counter doing homework, tongue peeking out, while I balanced the day's accounts and told him stories. How to spot a liar by the way his feet turn inward. How to judge the weight of a sack by the tiredness in a man's eyes. How to pray without moving your lips. People gossiped about our closeness, the way people always do when love makes a shape they don't recognize. He asked me once, timid as a goat at Harmattan, "Mama, do I have a father?" I felt something in me go still. I told him the truth without the easy lies. There was a boy. There is a man out there. Maybe he knows. Maybe he doesn't. "Do you lack love?" I asked him. And he shook his head hard, tears standing in his eyes. "Then take what you have," I said, "and let's cook with it. If more comes, we will add pepper." Dozy held me as if I might blow away. He promised at 10 what no one should ever promise at 10. That he would be my husband and my son, and my comfort. Children are always brave where adults choose to be complicated. The world saw our warmth and called it something else. The world always has a new name for what it cannot understand. There was a wedding once. One of my girls married a man whose wealth was so loud, even his shadow had a driver. The bride's gown caught the light and flung it all around like water. It glittered with stones that had traveled farther than my feet ever would. Diamonds arranged like small moons. When she took her first step, something broke open in me. A small stubborn jar with a faded label I had kept on a high shelf. My throat filled with salt. It wasn't envy. It was remembrance. A sweetness mixed with ash. I had wanted that walk once. The aisle long as a new road. The veil light as forgiveness. A hand waiting at the other end. Tears betrayed me before I could swallow them back. Dosie's hand sought mine and gripped boy and man at the same time. On the way home he said, playful and serious both, "Mama, you will still wear your gown. I'll stand behind you and carry your veil like best man, eh?" I laughed with my whole face and then sat awake that night listening to the crickets argue with the generator's stammer, letting that foolish hope run round the room like a child that refused to sleep. When my son left for university, it was like someone had reached into my chest and moved the furniture around. The house felt too quiet, like a word that had lost its vowels. After a week of pretending to be fine, I boarded a bus and arrived with eye bags that weighed as much as a sack of onions. He opened the door, half amused, half worried, and I hugged him until the neighbours had their fill of gist. I did it again the next weekend, and the next. The boys teased him. "Mommy's boy," they called him, not unkindly. I pretended not to mind. If they had known the years it took for me to learn sleep without his snore like a small drum, they might have kept quiet. Time doing what time does. He graduated, wore a suit that made him look like a rumor of a man, and found a job in the city. He told me about a girl named Amanda, shy at first, then bold as rain. He had kept her hidden like a seed, sprouting in the dark. I was startled, and then delighted, and then terrified, all within a breath. Mothers learn quickly to make room for what they cannot control. When he brought her, I loved her the way a market woman loves good change. Instantly and with relief, I fed her with my hands, as my mother had fed the women she liked, slipping crispy fish between her lips while she blushed and laughed. "Sit here," I told her, pulling her to my lap, like a daughter who had been mine from the start. She looked at me, then at my son, the way people look at a thing they didn't know they needed until it arrives. Dosie told me he would marry her. My heart beat drums. We went to try gowns. We were not meant to buy for me. God knows this. But when she said, "Mama, try one," how do you say no to such pure mischief? The dress I wore was a lake of white. It held me kindly. In the mirror, I saw a girl with my face but newer, hope standing tall behind her eyes. I laughed. I cried. I pushed the feeling down like hot yam. Because life had taught me to swallow, without chewing, when sweetness threatens to choke me. On their wedding day, Abuja's son came in through the stained glass like a benediction. People turned their heads to follow Amanda's lace, like birds watching a kite. The pastor cleared his throat. The vows waited like cattle in a kraal. I had planned to wear an elegant wrapper and a gilet that could announce me to women in distant traffic. But I stood in my room alone, and the silence was so loud I could hear the old jar on the shelf start to rattle. I reached for the dress. It lay there like a dare. I wore it. The zipper sang a small song. Powder on the cheekbones, earrings glowing like tiny moons. When I stepped into the church, the murmur felt like harmattan wind, cool and everywhere. My son turned, Amanda turned, the pastor blinked. I walked slowly, smiling at the foolishness and the bravery of it, my heart thudding like a drum in a procession. Dosie's eyes were fire and worry together. "Mama," he whispered when I reached him. "Why?" I told him the only true thing there was. "Let me taste it with you, just once." He would have scolded me into ashes, but Amanda touched his arm, eyes soft as boiled yam. "Let her," she said, mercy in her voice, not pity. So I stood behind them in white as they promised each other things I had promised once, to the quiet in my chest. Salt. I took the cup to my lips and thought of all the times I had told women in church to trust God's timing. I drank and the granules scratched their way down like small stones. When he slept in broad daylight, I watched his chest rise and fall and wondered where the man I married had gone. Was this a storm or the weather? I wrapped my wrapper tighter and went to the one place in O2 that felt like a mother's lap, Mama Chi's food stall. She looked at me, the way older women look, scanning the surface for bruises, and then peering into the eyes to check if the soul limps. "What tin happen, my daughter?" she asked, and the words slipped out of me like water from a jar a child could not hold well. "He does not provide," I said. "He sleeps. He drops change as if I am a beggar on his own road." I did not tell her about the Gary with salt. Some shames take time to pronounce. She listened. She brought out a bowl of jollof that tasted like forgiveness. She said, "Start something small if you can, but you are heavy with child. At least begin antenatal. Government clinic is free. Tomorrow, go." Tomorrow became next week, because shame is a thorny vine that wraps around the ankles. When I finally found the strength, I asked Ugo for the fare, and he handed me 250 naira, as if he had pressed his last breath into my palm. "We need antenatal," I said. "I am past 3 months." He looked at the wall like answers were pinned there. "I don't have money," he replied. I left the house before tears could calcify on my face. At the clinic, the nurse who pricked my finger had hands like a patient river. "You are fine," she said. "Take these," and pushed routine drugs and a lecture toward me like small mercy. That night, Ugo returned with catfish pepper soup, the kind that glistens with oil, as if the fish itself wept and the pot collected its tears. He ate slowly, eyes half closed, while I sat on the bed and watched the steam rise. A prayer I was not invited to pray. I did not ask for a spoonful. The people who wrote Proverbs were correct. Silence has many dialects, days stacked into weeks, and I learned the geometry of hunger, how to divide small things into smaller parts, how to stretch a leaf until it becomes a meal, how to sing to a child who is not yet born so that courage enters through the music. When the craving came, a cold yogurt and bananas yellow as new moons, I swallowed them as air and told my body we were women. We have eaten less and survived. One morning after he dropped 200 naira and prepared to leave, I dropped to my knees and caught his trouser hem with my fingers. "Please," I said, palms wide as a book. "My due date is near. I have nothing, no pads, no cloth, no soap for the baby's first bath. If you cannot, I will go to church on Sunday and beg. I will stand before the pastor's wife and open my hand." Something flickered in his eyes, then died. He left, but power often hides in the throat until you threaten to use it. That afternoon, he returned with a large bag that puffed like pride, baby clothes, small caps like folded prayers, a tiny vest that looked too white to belong to this world. He pressed money into my hand and said, "I have been going through," a phrase so flimsy I could see light through it. I nodded, grateful for the things my child would wear, even if I could not stitch reason to their arrival. Inside me, relief loosened a knot. Labor found me mourning, shocked and alone. Pain is its own country, no passport, no border. Just wave after wave, until your name floats to the surface again. I called Mama Chi. She came like thunder, with her husband's bike huffing behind her. We reached the government hospital, where the walls smelled of Dettol, and the floors held the footsteps of 1,000 women who had bargained with God and won. Ugo said he was coming. He did not. Hours later, with sweat cooling on my back and a baby boy warm against my chest, I whispered gratitude to the ceiling. Mama Chi fed me stew and swallow with her own hand, because my hands shook like leaves in a late rain. Night made him a man again. He arrived with apologies that sounded like traffic. He thanked Mama Chi. He settled the bills with a carefulness that tried to rewrite pages already read. She looked at him with a mother's precise disapproval, the kind that can slap your conscience without touching your face. We went home in a cab that smelled faintly of petrol and peppermint. I held my son's small head and counted his breaths like gold coins. Then the old script returned, as if I had not just passed through fire and survived. He withdrew. He slept. Money evaporated. My breasts filled and emptied like the tides, and I ate whatever the day had mercy to offer. When my baby fell sick and the clinic kept us because the bill was heavier than my purse, I called Ugo until my call log looked like a rosary of his name. Silence answered. I called the pastor's wife, voice low as if asking for water in a stranger's compound. She sent the money with a softness that made me ache. Come and see me, she said. You and your husband. Pastor must see you both. I walked back from the clinic with my son on my chest and the afternoon sun sitting on my head like a hard lesson. The market smell, smoke and pepper and faith washed over us. Children ran past with laughter flaring like bright cloth on a line. I thought of Eugene, of the mug I broke and the way he didn't shout, of his warning that wore a prophet's shoes. I thought of Isu's gift, Bible, money, a blessing rolled in dignity. I thought of the pastor's confidence, the word vouch, like a locked gate. I thought of the girl I was at the reception desk, scarf soft on my shoulder, smile rehearsed but authentic. The favor that awaited me around corners like an old friend. I thought of the altar where I said yes, and I thought of God, who was supposedly the singer behind every song of mine. I have always believed that truth is a road cut by footsteps. You walk it, and it appears. You stop, and the bush grows back. I held my son and walked. In my chest, sorrow and pride braided themselves into a rope I could hold. We will go, I told the wind. We will stand in front of people and name our pains. The thought of Ugo's anger brushed my skin. A rough cloth on a fresh wound. Still, I knew silence had been my enemy as much as his neglect. You can drown in a quiet house. Back in our room, the fan creaked a tired circle above. Ugo came in late, hands empty, eyes darting like a lizard, searching for two suns. I fed the baby, burped him, and waited for the small calm that comes after a satisfied sigh. Then I looked at my husband, the man I chose at a crossroad, where love sang two songs. The pastor's wife wants to see us. I said softly, on Sunday. He stared at me, then at the baby, then back at me. A laugh escaped him, thin, ugly, a blade wrapped in cloth. He did not answer. In the night, when my son finally slept, and the room discovered its breath again, I lay on the mat and spoke to the ceiling, not in church voice, not in choir soprano, not in the hush of the well-behaved believer, but in the language of women who have eaten salt and remember sweetness. God, I said, you know I did not come here to perform ruin. If I misheard you, if I sowed your name to my own will, forgive me. If I heard you and yet walked toward a man who chooses shadows, hold me. I am not ashamed to ask for help. Send me helpers who do not want my silence but my life. Morning will come, as it always does in this part of the world with rooster, cries and the clatter of buckets, and the sun climbing into our sky with a stubborn joy. I will bathe my child in water warmed in a dented kettle. I will press shea butter into his soft hair. I will tie him to my back and knot the wrapper with the muscle memory of 1,000 mothers behind me. I will go where truth is asked for and give it. If Ugo follows, then let his steps find repentance. If he does not, then let my steps find a path where my voice is not a caged bird. One evening, we gathered on the balcony to watch the neighborhood put the day away. Amarachi slept in the crook of my arm, warm as fresh bread. Dozy leaned against the railing, the way men lean when their hearts are full and their mouths do not know how to say it. Amanda's laughter drifted from the kitchen with the smell of fried onions. Across the street, a boy practiced a trumpet badly. He missed notes as if missing was the point, then found one pure note by accident and held it, thin and beautiful in the dark. "Listen," I whispered, and everyone did. The moment stretched like a cat on a warm tile. I thought of the girl I had been, feet dusty, belly rising, walking out of Umi with nothing but fear and a stubborn refusal to die like a small thought. I wanted to tell her, wait, not the waiting that is a punishment, no, the waiting that is a kiln. Hold the wheel steady. Learn the price of pepper by smell. Sing while you count coins. Cry if your eyes insist, and then salt the soup and eat. One day, you will wear white twice without shame. One day, your hand will be too full of joy to carry grief home from the market. One day, your name will be called inside a small mouth, and it will sound like a hymn you used to hum to yourself to ward off despair. One day, when the generator chorus starts, you will not flinch, you will sway. And when the wind remembers the road to your balcony and climbs the rails to touch your face, it will carry with it the smell of rain on zinc and roasted maize. The first boy's laugh, the first hunger, the first refusal. You will meet them at the door like old friends, press cola into their hands, and tell them, sit. We have made space. Tonight, I will sleep early, the kind of sleep that softens the bones. Before I close my eyes, I will stand at the window and count lights in other people's rooms, small squares of living. Somewhere, a woman is peeling yam under a naked bulb, her baby strapped to her back, her jaw set, but not hard. Somewhere, a man is promising what he has no idea how to deliver yet, and his voice is brave in the wrong places. Somewhere, a girl is holding a train of lace, behind a friend, and imagining her own step into brightness. Somewhere, a mother is crying quietly into a towel in a bathroom that is not hers. To all of them, I send a piece of my voice, the part that learned tenderness after surviving iron. Let the road be long if it must, but let the feet be sturdy. Let the jar on the shelf rattle, yes, but let the hands that reach for it be unafraid. I am ego. I am still learning how to carry joy without breaking it, how to share it without spilling. I am still surprised by the generosity of morning. When I open the shop tomorrow, I will chalk the date on the wall and smile at how ordinary it looks. I will hand change to a woman who counts it twice out of habit. I will give a child a sweet for answering, "Good afternoon, Ma," with both hands. I will buy too many oranges because the vendor's eyes are tired. I will call my son just to hear him say, "Mama," in that half-laugh way. I will visit my granddaughter and sniff the top of her head like a thief of small comforts. I will lay beside my husband and listen to his breath sync with mine. And when night turns its face to me, I will whisper into it like a friend, "Thank you for not arriving earlier. Thank you for not arriving late. Thank you for arriving all the same."